Allow me now, honorable members, and the conference as a whole, to invite His Excellency, President of the European Parliament, Honorable Schulz. It's now your time.
Dear President of the National Assembly, Mr. Sisulu, dear Chairman of the National Council of Provinces, dear Mr. Malangu, and I must say, dear colleague, in the European Parliament we have 23 official languages. So if I would welcome everybody in the 23 different languages, it is too much time. Nevertheless, vielen Dank, thank you very much, merci beaucoup, mille grazie, muchas gracias, muito obrigado. So I stop here. Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Motlanthe, dear speakers of the and colleagues of the national parliaments from Mauritius, Seychelles, Swaziland and Tanzania, honorable members of the South African National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces, and dear speakers of the provincial assemblies present here, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you on the occasion of the International Consultative Seminar hosted by the South African legislative sector. It is a special honor for me to address such a distinguished audience on this, my first official visit to South Africa as President of the European Parliament. On this occasion, I wish to relay you a message on behalf of the European Parliament. Let me start by affirming the importance that South Africa has as an international and strategic partner for the European Union today. Not only has South Africa impressed the world through its democratic achievements and fight against discrimination over the last 20 years, South Africa has also demonstrated that it is perfectly capable of keeping up with its increasing economic importance and the growing international political responsibilities that come with it. Both South Africa and the European Union are committed to multilateralism under the auspices of the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, the G20, and other multilateral institutions. Your country plays a constructive role as an intermediary between industrialized countries and developing countries. To mention just one example that stands for the importance of South Africa's contribution to international cooperation was its leading role in the adoption of the United Nations Human Rights Council resolution on sexual orientation and gender identity. Looking at the South African Constitution, it is one of the most forward-looking constitutions in the world. And as a German and a huge football fan, I have to say that I was really impressed by the successful organization of the 2010 FIFA World Cup, which further enhanced the positive image of South Africa in the world. The results of the matches were not so successful for the Germans, but the organization were wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, both the European Union and South Africa are solid democracies with shared values. We have crucial common objectives: peace, security, democracy, respect for human rights, and commitment to poverty reduction and development. There are a number of signs that give testimony to the importance of our partnership. Since the Trade Development and Cooperation Agreement was signed in 1999. Our relations have only intensified. South Africa and the EU have reduced trade tariffs by 85 and 95% respectively. And trade volumes have more than doubled in the past decade. Bilateral trade has increased by 128% since 2004. And I'm convinced that enhancing our economy and trade relations will drive economic growth even further and will help us to fight together against poverty, social inequality, and promote environmental protection. But the deepening of relation between the European Union and South Africa is much more than just trade. An important step forward in our political and social cooperation came in 2007 when, with the launch of the EU-South Africa Strategic Partnership. As you certainly know, this strategic partnership is the only one of its kind between the European Union and an African country. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to congratulate the Speakers Forum on their decision to put the focus of this seminar on the role of parliaments in economic development and transformation. Please let me present to you from a European parliamentary perspective why it is so important to underline the importance of parliaments. The existence of a free elected parliament is the precondition for people to be represented and for their voices to be heard in a democratic way. Although democracy is much more than just the existence of a parliament, in the absence of a free elected legislative institution, it is hardly imaginable that a true democracy exists. Because of the international financial crisis, democracies worldwide have been under pressure. Governments have come to a remarkable conclusion. Because the markets want to see prompt, decisive action, parliaments should be de facto excluded from decision-making. In some ways, I can understand them, because in my days as a mayor, I experienced at first hand how challenging parliaments can make life for executive institutions. And that these executive institutions, bodies, don't like parliaments behind them the whole day because they make their life much more difficult, and that they want to see the parliaments go away. Quite understandable for me. But one thing is clear, in democracy, the governments have to win the confidence of the parliaments, because in such a way they win the confidence of citizens, and not the other way around. Parliaments must be exactly that, challenging. They must ensure that political decisions are subjected to public scrutiny, and they must discuss them, perhaps amend them, and sometimes even overturn them in public. In the rhythm of our globalized and mediatic society, decisions are taken and implemented with unprecedented speed. We are currently seeing how all over the world and under pressure from the markets, decisions are being taken swiftly and, if possible, without parliamentary involvement. The right thing to do, however, is precisely the opposite. Both democracy and parliamentarism need time. And if we do not take that time, we will have a democracy that is at the mercy of the market, at the mercy of the market principles, rather than a market that complies with democratic principles. The second essential role for parliaments is to ensure the inclusion of all citizens into the political democratic system. This is important because leaving parts of the population outside the system will not only harm the lives of those excluded, it will also prevent the community and every individual that is part of it, no matter their privileged position, from realizing its full potential. Let me be clear, the challenge of growing inequalities is not one faced only by South Africa. Around the world, economic inequalities have grown in recent years. In parts of Southern Europe, for example, youth unemployment has reached 50%. This had led to a feeling of hopelessness among young people, which scares me. At this point, please allow me a remark on the internal situation of the European Union in the current international financial crisis. Many of you here are certainly wondering what is going on in Europe. Let me assure you of one thing. Although our economic situation looks difficult and growth is projected to be slow, the EU remains the largest economy and the world's largest trading bloc. The European Union has overcome many setbacks and crises in its 60-year history, and I'm sure that we will emerge from the crisis even stronger. Analyzing the issues of inclusion and inequality through a global lens shows us the crucial context in which we currently stand. 15 years ago, reducing global poverty inspired the Millennium Declaration and associated development goals. Since then, the MDGs have been an essential tool and important progress has been made. The number of people living below the poverty line was reduced by half. Nonetheless, important challenges remain. That is why the European Parliament continues to call for EU institutions and the member states to increase their support for countries to meet the Millennium Development Goals, as well as to stick to previous development aid commitments despite the global economic difficulties. The goal of the post-2015 agenda should be to provide a decent life for all by 2030. That must integrate three key dimensions of sustainable development: economic, social, and environmental. Ladies and gentlemen, I take note and welcome the call made at the most recent EU-South Africa interparliamentary meeting for establishing an effective monitoring of our strategic partnership. A more direct involvement from parliaments is important not only to assure the effective implementation of the partnership, but also to turn the aspiration of a partnership for our people into a reality. It is now for our parliaments to decide on the most appropriate mechanism to be implemented in order to fulfill this role. Another important contribution would be to foster the growing involvement of parliaments also within multilateral institutions. Fostering the cooperation between the European Parliament and the Pan-African Parliament, whose plenary I had the privilege of addressing yesterday in Midrand, as a key dimension of the EU-African Union relations is an important step. I therefore welcome the huge enthusiasm to the South African legislative sector's initiative to dedicate this 2013 ICS to the topic of strengthening democracy through global collaboration of legislators in economic development and transformation. This is not only a crucial area, but also one where, given the complexity of the subject matter, a great deal of work can be done to strengthen the capacities of legislators to provide effective oversight of the economic and financial sectors. Parliaments, ladies and gentlemen, should play a crucial role when it comes to the promotion of economic reforms. Parliamentarians have to ensure that these reforms aim to reduce socioeconomic inequalities and avoid the exclusion of parts of the population. Parliaments, as the elected representatives of the population, need to promote models of development and transformation that place people, not figures, at the heart of their economies. In the preparation of my visit here, I learned about a traditional South African concept, the idea of Ubuntu, apparently difficult to translate directly into English. I was told that a good approximation would be, I am because you are, or a person becomes a person only thanks to other people. I think that this idea of Ubuntu has a global focus that speaks of our common humanity, a humanity which cannot be fulfilled if we exclude, be it through a racial or brutal political system like apartheid, or through economic deprivation. We cannot actively exclude or even forget about other members of our communities and hinder them from realizing their potential. As elected representatives of our respective populations, we have the duty to speak and act in order to prevent economic inequalities, from excluding the most vulnerable from the South African, European, and global community. If we fail to include these most vulnerable and recognize their humanity, we will also be denied ours. Therefore, Ubuntu is for me a duty for all of us and a very inspiring concept. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention. Have a productive seminar.